Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Yarns with Andy. I've got Blair Chant, a returning guest, Blair Chant, um, who's currently working as a contracts manager for Henderson Demolition. In a previous life, he'd worked for KO. That's when we did the previous podcast. And here we are. Now he's working for Henderson Demolition and he's come on to do another podcast. Welcome, Blair.
Thanks for having me. Glad to
Mate.
be here.
Right. Thank you for coming around for the second time, though.
Yeah, second time. More than happy to be here. Like I said to you last time, keep going. Your podcast is great.
Yeah, mate. It's hard work sometimes, but
I bet.
it's an absolute lifestyle.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. There's a little process map on how we two got here, by the way.
I don't doubt it. I'm interested in seeing that process map as a fan of process maps.
That process map also includes my haircuts, but let's not deviate. Now, welcome, mate. Welcome. Tell us what's changed in your life. I mean, you were in KO. You're now in KO. For the people that don't know, it's Kainga Ora, and now you moved over to Henderson Demolition. What changed?
What changed? I got a phone call. I was we were closing off at Kaingaora, we were closing off the neighbourhood that I was assigned to. So that project was coming to a natural conclusion. And I got a phone call from Henderson Demolition asking me to come back.
Nice.
And I was like, sure. There's
Sure.
not a lot stopping me at this point.
Fair.
It's nice. It's nice to close out a project before you leave it.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
that timing wasn't quite perfect, but Henderson was quite accommodating of letting me stay long enough to see it out.
Enjoying your time at Henderson?
I am. I knew exactly what I was in for. It's contracting, right? So there are challenges. Would you go back and work for a previous employer? You wouldn't at all?
I wouldn't.
Not even the ones you enjoyed working at?
I definitely enjoyed my time at Fletcher's.
Yeah.
I'd go back to Fletcher's. Yeah. I mean, if it was the right, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, depends on what my company's doing,
The
strategic planning's doing, depending on
Yeah.
what Fletcher's are doing, and multiple variables there. But Fletcher's, I'd go back to for sure, 100%.
I spent a bit of time thinking about going back.
Yeah.
When they gave me a phone call, and we caught up a few times before I said yes, just to talk through what that would look like, what that would look like now, 2 years later after having left, and it was it seemed to me to be a sensible decision. So
Yeah, right.
went
I mean,
back.
I'm generally one for not looking back. You know what I mean? But but if the opportunity's right, 100%.
There-
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see it as a backwards move. It's
Yeah, fair. I mean, when I say back, I said, okay, I've done my stint. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I've moved on.
Yeah.
What's next?
Yeah.
But
Next for me, I guess, putting it in that kind of framing, next for me is to take Henderson to that next level.
yeah, there we go. That's the challenge.
So-
That's the challenge.
That's the fun part, and I've got some fairly lofty goals in mind, and so we're working on those strategically.
Interesting, man.
Strategic planning, if you will.
Hey, there we go. Where'd you get that from? Hey?
It just came to me now.
I bet it did. Totally. Just came to you just then. Yeah. Are you missing a CO in the end? Strategic planning. Cool.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Hey.
maybe.
I know a guy. You can talk to him.
I don't know if we can afford that guy.
Oh, yeah. Anyways, mate, welcome. Welcome again.
Cheers.
Good. Okay. Oh, jump into our questions, eh? That was a good little intro. I've never had a fun intro like that before.
Which one you got first?
Oh, I don't know. What of a gem send?
Yeah. Okay.
Or just wing it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. Let's jump.
I mean, which subject did you have first? I'm assuming you just checked it.
Yeah, I did.
Just so I can get my brain in order.
It's the whole government project thing.
Oh,
Government
yeah,
project.
that one. Okay. Cool.
Now you threw me off balance, bro. Fuck you know. Yeah. So, Blair, it's a well-known fact that government projects versus private projects, they're priced differently.
Yes.
Yep. You have experience working for government projects and for private projects.
Yes.
Give us your insights as to why.
It's actually really simple. It
Go on.
boils down to a really, really simple difference, and that's the values are different. Not the dollar values. The principles are different. The driving principles,
Core values.
core values. For-profit entities, one of their driving principles is to make a profit.
Fair?
So costs are always front of mind, expenditures front of mind, and pricing is front of mind. With a government project, it's there, but it's not the primary concern.
Because
primary concern-
you've got taxpayer funds flooding in to fill a hole if there is one.
Correct.
Could even be a $4 billion hole.
Correct. Yeah, there can be huge holes, and that's regardless of which party's in power. It's regardless of anything. There's
100%.
Like everyone makes
The funnel of the
errors on
taxpayer
that.
funds aren't stopping.
But it's underwritten. Insurance companies don't require you to take out insurance on government. Got to talk the right insurance. So I can't remember the name of it. It's the insurance you take out when a company folds. and
Public
you have-
liability or public
No, it's not public
indemnity?
liability. No, it's
A
neither of those.
professional indemnity.
It's neither of those.
I've got both. That's the only. That's why I
Most
know
people
that.
have those. No,
Yeah.
there's one in particular where if the entity falls over, like
Yeah.
it goes liquidates, that debt that's owed to you is covered. So you get a payout from the insurance company when those companies fold if you have a contract in place. But I can't remember what the exact
Terminology,
insurance
that's all right.
was. But essentially, you cannot get that insurance on the government because the insurance companies know that the government doesn't liquidate.
Fair.
Right? So, yes, it's the taxpayer who guarantees the funds of that project. Right?
Yep. A funnel that's never going to stop.
It's a funnel that's never going to stop. You can always put up taxes. You can draw taxes from new areas.
Yep.
Or
So
you
the
can just
core
extend-
values between both these entities are different. Understand that? Okay,
They-
you've got
they are.
government
And so
projects.
and so the driving force behind most government contracts is actually not so much get the best price, get the most cost efficient way of delivery. It's getting the best value for money. And the way they consider that value for money takes into account more variables than a private contract. They take into account the local community's perception of the project. They'll take in the local, all your stakeholders, all your various stakeholders, including non-profit groups that are concerned, including iwi, mana whenua considerations. All of that, you've dealt with a number of private projects, right? And
And
those
government, yeah.
aren't high on the list of your core values.
Yeah, I mean, when you start with a private entity, it's return on investment. How quickly can I build this building, and how can I get a tenant in as quickly as possible to start making some money?
And so that's essentially the key difference. It's not a perfect apples with apples comparison to start with.
But it's interesting though, right? You start looking at government funded projects now.
Mhm.
Okay, you've got alliance models procurement when you kind of procure models. You've got alliance models built into government projects, but you never find an alliance model in a private entity. Like where the designer comes in
That's a
with the
good
main
point,
contractor.
actually. And
Yeah.
I would argue that that's precisely for the difference in the core values, because alliance, the benefit of alliance is to extract that extra value for money across a broad set of core values, whereas you don't need that in a private model. So you'd never pursue
Well,
an alliance
I'd argue
model.
otherwise, actually.
Would you?
Yeah, I would, because which is great, right? So when you look at that, the biggest benefit is you have your designer and your builder working together as one entity. Yeah.
Yeah.
But how many we work together on different projects? Auckland Airport being one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that office, were there any design people that actually designed that project sitting in the same office?
So
How many
that's-
RFIs? Hang on.
Yeah,
How many RFIs?
I know where you're going.
How many RFIs have I just gone? Proven fact, right? Okay. Number of jobs I've worked on in a private entity build. I can guarantee you there'd be one RFI per working day on that job in New Zealand.
Yep. Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that. That seems.
It's me.
within
I've run that
reason to
stat
me.
on at least 6 different projects that I've worked on. There's one RFI every working day. How fucking ridiculous is that? You could eliminate that's paper war right there, right? So I'm just like passing on the buck to the next guy saying, "Oh, I don't know, you haven't given me a buildable design, so I'm just gonna."
So I accept that. However, I would argue that the way of solving that particular issue is not with an alliance, it's with early contractor engagement, where you get in that collaboration into the design early when it's done well.
Exactly.
When it's done well. But hang on, alliances only work across those broader core value set when they're done well too. Otherwise, they don't achieve those wider core values.
Fair.
So when these concepts, and they are just models, right, contracting models, when they're done well, you receive those benefits. When they're not done well, you don't.
But overall, would you agree that New Zealand's procurement model can do with a bit of a rejig and complete reform to come up with a new model that actually works? Because the current procurement systems we have in place are pretty fucked.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. I'll give
a
you
major shake up.
100%. I'll give you my reasoning as to why as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the amount of emphasis we put on cost. Yeah. So your priced attribute is part of a tender and your non-priced attribute is part of a tender. Okay. Generally, it's split. The 60% of weightage is given towards the lowest price, and 40% weightage is given to your time, your health and safety, your quality,
Yeah.
the amount of
Capability,
available
resource,
resources.
capacity,
Yeah. Okay.
current pipeline.
So
Yeah.
if I chuck in the cheapest cost, man, I get the job. It's pretty simple.
You're in the front running for it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So do I
How
think
bad is that? Like, how
Well-
bad is that for the industry as a whole?
It's poor.
Yep.
I guess what I would say to that though is we have to deal with the situation we're in, not the one we wish we were in. And with New Zealanders, I read this study, this is decades ago while I was still at uni. I read a study where New Zealand is one of the most price-driven countries in the world.
You reckon?
Yeah. Well, this is what the study was. Again, this is a couple of decades ago. And it was why we have places like discount stores like the Warehouse that are so successful in New Zealand. And then the same exact model fell over in Australia because it's a different culture. New Zealand is very driven by the dollar. When you as a private homeowner, right, seek 3 quotes for something, do you go with the cheapest?
Now knowing what I know about construction, I would look at it differently. But if I didn't know what I knew about construction, I would go for the cheapest. Yes.
And that's what most New Zealanders do. That's what most New Zealanders do.
Go for the cheapest
in,
price.
In Europe, it's quite different. They usually select the middle option.
Interesting.
This
What's
is
the
culture we're in.
what's the logic behind that? Behind picking the middle option? Do you know?
It's seen as a spreading of risk. It's just a cultural thing. As a spreading of risk. The cheapest guy might have missed something. The expensive guy is obviously overcharging. So the guy in the middle's probably got the balance right.
Interesting. That's a very clever way of looking at things, right?
And it's just a different cultural way of doing.
But in
things.
New Zealand, we turn around and go, oh yeah, that
In
guy's
New
the cheapest. I'll
Zealand,
pick him up.
that guy's like half the price of the other 3.
Yeah.
He's got my guy. That's my guy.
Even though I know he's gonna fuck that job up, he's my guy.
Well, as a layman, you wouldn't know that.
wouldn't
But
know that.
I'm more commenting on the general. Our culture is very price driven. It is a key focus for New Zealanders, and the construction industry doesn't deviate from the rest of our culture.
Fair enough. It's quite interesting.
It is a very price driven market in New Zealand, and people for decades have accepted the significant risks that are associated with that, all the negative,
Press that comes in, everything. There's this, yeah.
all the things that go wrong.
No, but here's my problem with being price driven, right? It's the amount of stress that actually pushes onto the people working on the job downstream.
Yep.
You've seen it, I've seen it.
Yep.
Yep. You worked 12 to 16-hour days. I've done it. We've all done it. Why? Because somebody said, I will build that job for $130 million when you know it's going to cost $150 million.
Yeah.
And now there's immense pressure downstream to make that happen within a set time frame. And you, the longer you run, the more it's going to cost. And in time, in public perception, return on investment from a client, mate, it's insane. It's like it just drives poor mental health in the workforce.
So going back to the original question of
Sorry.
price differences between private and government, who's more likely to change their behavior and be prepared to lift their pricing to accommodate changes in the environment when it comes to mental health, when it comes to fitness of the team, when it comes to reducing the hours worked by the guys on site? They're going to be government contracts because they consider that as a core value. The welfare of all the downstream, it's a core value that they have because government in general are concerned of the welfare of the citizens.
Interesting.
Right? Like I've returned to your question and flipped your concept on its head.
Fair enough. No. I mean, no, I'm just trying to think back and see what you're saying is true because I've recently worked on a government job and they focus on actually building a culture within the team. You know,
this is what I'm saying. The core value is completely different, and the expense is associated with that.
Anyways, man, I think we're out of time on that one, but we could keep going, but I'll probably choose
There's
to
some
end
many
it there.
topics here, man. Like we'll never get through all of them.
No, man, appreciate that.